Hi guys, this is Eric from Dumb Game Dev, and today we're going to be looking at the Steam VR load level script. And what this script does is it helps to load levels in VR, specifically for Steam VR. And loading between one level and the next, if you're not using a system such as this, you're going to get kicked out into your loading screen in VR, which is usually, at least in mine, it's a dark blue or black screen, and sort of nothing interesting to look at, and your players might be wondering, what are you doing here? Did the game stop? Did it stall? What's happening? So Steam VR allows you to define sort of an in-between loading screen between your first and second level. And you can do that in a bunch of different ways. So we're going to take a look at the different ways that it can do that and how to set it up, because it is a little bit buggy. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, this is also going to be part of my No Code VR course that's coming up pretty soon. So if you're interested in that course, go ahead and sign up to the newsletter mailing list below. And I'm going to be offering substantial discounts to that if you sign up before the course comes out, up to 50% off. So go ahead and sign up, and then once it comes out, we'll let you know and send you a good coupon to that. So without any further ado, let's just have a look at this script. Now, I've added it to an empty game object here, so you can just go ahead and create an empty game object and call it whatever you want. And then if you have Steam VR already installed, so if you're doing any kind of VR work, you most likely have this already, you can just choose Add Component and then type Steam VR, and you'll find the Steam VR load level, so go ahead and attach that. Now, I've made a couple Playmaker actions to help out with this, to trigger it. And to find those, just go to my GitHub account. You'll see a link for that below this video. And once you download that zip, unzip it, and just toss it into your assets here. Make a new folder and put it in there so you don't lose them. It doesn't matter where they go. And then they're going to recompile, and they should show up in your action section here. If we type Steam, we should be able to find them. They'll be in a Steam VR folder. And the couple of actions we have is the basic Steam load level, which will allow you to set the scene name and choose whether it's additive or async. You can adjust the fade times here. You can set the skybox, and this very simple one just triggers the load script. So I suggest you use the basic Steam load level, and it allows you to just choose a scene name and then just go with the defaults if you're not sure. Now, before you do that, you want to go back to your scene game object here, and let's fill out some of this information. Now, just starting from the top, we have the scene name. So basically this would just be the same as it would be in your build settings. So make sure you have the scene added to your build settings. So just choose assets, choose whatever the scene is, and then just say, I think we can drag and drop it in there like this. So now it's in our build settings. We can also remove it. So once it's in your build settings, you'll have the name here. So just make sure you remember the name, and it is case sensitive. And you can add it here, or you can add it into the Playmaker action. Now, it comes with an internal path process and internal process arguments. You probably won't need this, especially if you're using Playmaker, so that's fine. It has a load additive and a load async. Again, if you're not familiar with this is, don't worry about it for now. Just go with the load async unless it's causing problems, and you can turn off the load async. Now, when it comes to the actual background that's displayed when you're between levels in the loading level, it has three basic options here, and they override each other, so you just want to do one or the other. And if we start down the bottom, we can set a basic background color, and you can just choose a general background color that will appear, and it looks sort of like a skybox. Now, the other option is to show grid, and if you check show grid, it's just going to show your default Steam background that I found. So this sort of defeats the purpose for me of actually using this, so I'm not going to use this, but it will override your background color. Now, the third option is that you can use a skybox. So it says front, back, left, right, top, and bottom. So these are actually skybox fields. So if you open up any skybox, and I've got the asset here called all sky, and we open one up here, you'll find that it will come with, for example, the mat, which holds all of the skyboxes, but you also have a front, a back, a left, a right, an up, and a down. And so you can just go ahead and fill those into this section here. Now, you will find out probably really quickly off the bat, though, it won't work and it's going to throw up an error. And that is because you need to set the right format to these textures before they're going to work. So let's have a look. We'll grab one of the textures, and if we look at it, we need to override the default settings here. So if you don't see this override tab, click the down button, and this will allow you to see the override tab. So we have Android and we have PC, Mac, and Linux. So PC, Mac, and Linux is what we're going to need. Then you click the override for PC, Mac, Linux. You can change the max size. I'm going to leave mine at 2048, but it's the format that you want to change. So by default, mine are all RBG compressed DXT1s. So you want to click down here and then choose RGB 32 or RGBA 32-bit, and then make sure to apply. So I'm not going to apply to this one because I'm not using it, but you can go ahead and do that. And so just fill all these out, and that will override the background color, and I think the show grid will override everything else. So just disable the ones that you don't want to use. Basically one of those three. Now you can set the fade in and fade out time, which is the time that it takes to fade to this in-between load, as well as you can set a post-load settle time. This means how long will you be in the in-between scene. So for example, if you're testing this out and you want to have a good look and it keeps fading in and out real fast, you can get it to stop in that scene for X amount of time. So if you set it for 30 seconds, you'll fade in and wait at least 30 seconds and then fade out. So you probably want to have this to 0 or something very short like 0.5, you know, for the actual game. But while you're testing this out, you might want to turn this up just so you can have a better look of things. Now, if you set auto trigger on enable, this will trigger the script as soon as the scene loads, so that's not something we want to do. Now, so here's part of the tricky part that I found here, is you can set a loading screen. And what this is it shows an image basically in front of your head. And, you know, it could be a logo, it could be some instructions saying the word like loading, please wait, or whatever you want it to be. And you can set the distance of this from your head. And you can do that down here where it says loading scene distance. You could set this to like 10, it'll be 10 out, which seems like a reasonable amount. If you set this to 0, you're not going to see it because it's right on your head. So you might try and put a loading scene image in and you're not going to see anything. Now the loading scene image also needs to be changed to the correct format. It cannot be the RBG compressed DX1. You're going to need to change it to the RBG A 32-bit or it won't show up. In fact, it will just be invisible. It'll be clear, so to speak. Then below that, you can set a progress bar empty or full. So this is a loading bar, and a lot of like UGUI assets and stuff like that come with loading bars. So for example, if I type loading here, I think I have one. So like this is a loading bar that's empty, and then this is a loading bar, you know, that's full. So here's a full one, and then you can see an empty one has nothing on it, but it's the right size. It's actually white. So basically you want two strips, one to be full and one to be empty, so you can, you know, set those there. I found that the loading, right, so there's a little hitch here. If you have no loading scene image, but you have progress bars, I found the progress bars won't appear. So if you want just progress bars and no loading scene image, you might want to put a transparent image in there, a small transparent image. Otherwise your loading progress bars are just not going to appear. And it may have to do with the position. So if you have no loading screen, it's probably going to appear at position 0, and it also makes the progress bars appear at position 0, which means that you're not going to see it. So that's my tip here is for that. Now the issue is when you lose a loading screen and the progress bar, they're both going to be set at the same loading screen distance, which means that you're not going to see the progress bar. So it's kind of a catch-22 because the loading screen will appear on top of your progress bar. So what you might want to do is, if you're really trying to work this out, you could put a transparent loading screen here. Then on the progress bar, you would actually have not just the bar, but on the bar above it, you might have your title. So for example, if you're just looking at my screen here, for example, here's your logo and it says the words loading, and underneath will be the progress bar. And instead of just being just the progress bar, it's all one image. So use one image for progress bar and one image for progress bar loading, and then the loading scene is just transparent. So I hope that makes sense to you. That's potentially one way to do this without actually going into the code. You could go into the code and try and adjust it, and you might be able to fix that there. The other way to fix this issue is by setting the loading screen transform and a progress bar transform. And this has its own issues. So to give you the pros and cons of that, with the loading screen and the progress bar, and you set the distance without using the transforms, it will always appear in front of your view of wherever you're looking when the loading screen starts. So if I'm looking north, south, east, or west, or wherever, as soon as it starts, it will appear right in front of my eyes. So this is super helpful. If you use a transform to set the position, it will always appear in world space, so it won't appear relative to your view. So if you're looking the wrong way, you may not even see the loading bar. So it's nice to be able to set the transform, but it's not nice that you may not see it. Therefore, my suggestion is, if you're really concerned about people seeing it right away, is to use my loading bar progress trick of just having a clear image on the loading screen and then actually combining the loading screen and progress bar into one image for this. So if you do want to set a transform, basically all you need to do is I set up a progress bar, and it's an empty game image, or sorry, an empty game object, and I set it to 0, 0, 0. And then I added y minus 1, so the y-axis is up and down, right? If you look here, so this actually just lowers the progress bar just a little bit, so it's lower. And then I added a z of 10, which means that it's away from me 10 degrees. So this will make it sort of in the middle of your screen and then slightly below. So hopefully that makes sense for you, but it will always be, you know, towards the z-axis. So if you're not looking in that direction, you may not see it right away. So once you've created this in your scene, you know, you can just drag and drop it onto your progress bar transform. You can create one for your loading scene transform as well, because you want to set the position of both of these. If you don't, if you set the position of just the progress bar transform, it will be over in one place, and then your loading scene will be wherever you're looking. So they're going to be in two completely different places, which seems really sort of messy and confusing. So that's sort of it for this script, and like I said, it's got a bunch of quirks that you sort of have to work out, and hopefully you can figure that out based on sort of the information that I've given here. Now on mine here, I have an FSM attached, and if we edit this FSM, I've added a do not destroy on load, and then I've added just a wait here to test it out for me, and then I trigger the scene load. Now if you add this FSM to a different game object, not to the one with the Steam VR script, you're going to need to add this don't destroy on load. And what this is going to do is make sure this game object, and specifically this FSM, because you're using it, won't destroy itself while the other level is loading. Once it's completely loaded, it will disappear. Now if you attach your FSM to this Steam VR load level game object, then you can actually, you don't need to use this, because this script will also call its own don't destroy on load, so that it doesn't get destroyed itself while it's going into the next scene. That doesn't mean you don't need to put this into another scene, because you will. It just means that this won't get destroyed while you're transitioning, because you need it to help you transition from one scene to the next. Okay, so I know that's a lot of blah 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 and not a lot of pretty stuff to look at in this tutorial, but hopefully that will help you figure out how to use this Steam VR load level and how you can use it with Playmaker. So go ahead and grab my actions to do that. Sign up to my newsletter list below. Find out about my no-code VR course and more stuff like this. And lastly, if you're using Playmaker or you're doing VR stuff, come and join us at our Playmaker VR or just our Playmaker Slack channel, and the link for that is also below. We'd love to hear from you.